all last week. We're going to start our show tonight with a look at how Multnomah County is doing through the eyes of County Chair Jessica Vega Pederson. And yes, you should care even if you don't live here. As the most populated county in Oregon, the impact of the county and its policies are felt everywhere, which is why the state of the county is our big story tonight. I'd like to start out by showing you the beginning of the county chair's speech, but the state of the county is apparently such that they cannot overcome a technical issue on the stream for the chair's once-a-year speech from the start. So the stream, as it turns out, started about 15 minutes into it. I can tell you from the text released by her office that Jessica Vega Pederson said the county's job is to, quote, help people on their hardest days and provide a safety net for those whom our greatest systems fail, end quote. She described a county that in her vision is littered with problems and failed policies of the past. She lifted off several, including decades of federal disinvestment in housing, a broken and unaffordable child care system, a historic lack of treatment and services for people who struggle with addiction, mental illness, and substance use, people entangled in the criminal justice system, along with food and transit deserts. But according to the county chair, the good news is your tax dollars are helping out. She did not offer any specific numbers, by the way, on how any of those issues are improving, but she did say that they are, and the chair wants to build on what she called last year's success in the coming year.
Continue to make meaningful strides to address homelessness, the fentanyl and drug crisis, new behavioral health resources, including sobering and deflection, and investments for community safety across the entire county.
Okay, so the chair has listed a wide range of problems, but says the county government is making progress on fixing all of them and wants to do more of that in the future. She said her budget for next year pays for jails, but she's also proud the county is preparing for the rollback of Measure 110. They're doing that by making sure there are ways for drug users to avoid jail with what's called a deflection program.
My budget includes full funding for our jails, adult parole and probation, and specialty courts. Across the board, we are moving quickly and urgency, bringing more and better resources to our streets and to our community. We have already started to set up a program that will deflect people away from our criminal justice system and into the services that they need when changes to our drug laws through House Bill 4002 are fully implemented on September 1st. This is a short and aggressive timeline, but we have prioritized this work to ensure that when law enforcement have the tools they need to keep our community safe, they also have the tools they need to directly connect someone to services for their addiction. Without clear action, too many people will be caught unnecessarily in our justice system. I have convened an executive team that includes leadership from the city, law enforcement, the courts, the district attorney's office, and the treatment community to make rapid decisions. I have hired a coordinator to fully focus on being ready for September 1st and beyond. I have mobilized staff from across impacted Multnomah County departments, and we will make this deadline.
Now, I know that audio has a buzz. It's not your TV, and the framing's not great, but we wanted to bring that to you because we think it's important that you hear extended comments from the chair. A lot of things are already happening with the rollback of Measure 110, but the biggest part, recriminalizing drugs, well, that does not happen until September 1st, which is what she was talking about. Most of the chair's speech held sweeping generalities, few specifics. One area where she did share numbers was in the spending of the supportive housing services tax. She said the county has already spent $91 million, which is an improvement. They had trouble spending the money last year. Pederson also talked about the already announced plan to get more people off the county's streets.
In February, Mayor Ted Wheeler and I announced the Homelessness Response Action Plan this community has been asking for with clear goals. Mayor, thank you for being here today. In the next 2 years, we will house and shelter 2,700 more people. We will add an additional 1,000 shelter beds and hundreds of behavioral health beds. We will increase the number of adults leaving shelter for permanent housing by at least 15%. We will make sure that 75% of people placed in permanent supportive housing are still there 24 months after placement. And we will reduce homelessness among specific priority populations, including people of color and people identifying as LGBTQIA2S+. This Homelessness Response Action Plan brings together everyone to work from a shared roadmap. Healthcare providers, our justice system, housing providers, service providers, crisis responders, our government partners at all levels.
All right, so some specifics there, but it's still pretty soft in some of the areas. For example, reducing homelessness amongst those specific populations, for example, what does that mean? How many people of color are on the streets now? Would reducing that number by one person meet the chair's goal? That's the trouble with having fuzzy numbers or no numbers. But at least there is a plan with some metrics that we will check in on in February of 2026 to see how they've done. The chair also touted preschool for all, funded by a tax on high income earners. Jessica Vega Pederson was a champion for that as a county commissioner. The initiative promised to create 12,000 new publicly funded preschool seats by the year 2030. That's just 6 years from now. So far, they've created 2,000. Pederson also praised the county workforce.
None of this urgent, critical work that we have to do will be possible without Multnomah County being grounded, being centered, living its values not just in the work we do, but in the way that we do it. Our employees do incredible work, and they are always looking to improve our excellent services and being a leader in our region and our state. I want Multnomah County to continue to be an employer of choice and for our employees to feel supported in the work that they do. Last year, I committed to revitalizing our workforce equity strategic plan, and this year we are moving into action. This plan gives us accountability, better tools for evaluation, and turns the suggestions we've heard and the goals that we've set into action to change the daily lives of our workforce and the people that we serve. While many other counties and states are running away from racial justice and diversity and equity work, I am doubling down. Our county is addressing disparities in our services head on, and we are focused on ensuring every member of our community has a chance to live, rise, and thrive. This kind of work is hard work. It is uncomfortable. It is critical. And we are digging in at Multnomah County.
Okay, those are the facts from the state of the county. Now, here's my opinion on this. I live in Multnomah County. The picture the chair paints is pretty rosy. It sounds like we have some challenges, but by gosh, we're getting over them. It made me actually wonder if me and the chair are living in the same county, because it doesn't sound like it. But I think the state of the county is a mess, in my opinion, from drugs to mental illness to homelessness. I see the same issues that you do, and just like many of you, I don't think the county is doing nearly enough to solve those problems. I wanted to hear specifics today. Instead, what we got were generalities, which tells me little is going to change. The chair says there are structural issues that need to be fixed, but that it will be hard because they are decades in the making. Maybe, but some structural problems would be easy to fix if the chair wanted to. Let's start at the top. There's been a lot of reporting recently about how the county chair can decide what items are put on the county board's agenda. Vega Pederson says that rule was there before she got elected, but she has not changed it. If Jessica Vega Pederson disagrees with something, as she has, she can keep it from even getting a discussion by keeping it completely off that agenda. That effectively silences the other 4 commissioners if the chair doesn't like their idea. That's not very collaborative. The chair did that to Commissioner Sharon Myron earlier this year when Dr. Myron wanted to talk about slow ambulance response times in the county. Some pretty sharp lawyers are now pointing out that the chair rule violates the older and more important county charter that says that any commissioner can put any matter they want on the agenda for the board to talk about. So in my opinion, if the county chair wants to be a strong leader and practice collaboration, she should have announced at the start of her speech today that she's dropping that controlling rule. And from that moment on, any commissioner can put any topic on the county agenda. But she did not do that. Instead, she insisted the county is making great strides in fighting other problems. Okay, but the public trust in this government to take effective action is wavering, in my opinion, if not already broken. One way to shore up that trust is to let people know you understand the problem. You see the same mess that they do on our streets and in our neighborhoods. Because if you can't see the reality of where we are, it's almost impossible to cast a vision for where we're going. One way to do that is with specifics. The speech today held mostly platitudes, though. The chair said things like, "To decades of federal disinvestment in housing, we provide a growing network of shelters, transitional supports, and affordable housing. And every day we're adding more." What does that mean? Why can't the chair back up that with numbers? Tell us how many more shelter beds there are, how many more transitional supports, how many more affordable housing units there are than just last year or maybe even 10 years ago. I got to tell you, I want to be optimistic about where Multnomah County is going, but it's getting harder to feel that way. I had hoped for new, big, bold ideas and specific measurable action plans. Instead, I heard about a plan for homelessness that we've told you about before, and very little else. In my opinion, the state of Multnomah County is a mess, and this speech made it hard for me to see how any of that is going to change. That's my opinion anyway. You don't have to agree with me, but you should communicate with me. Let me know what you think, will you? Email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Coming up next on The Story, following the departure of 3 senior staffers over apparent ethical concerns about her wife's role in her administration, Governor Tina Kotek is losing another top staffer. And we recently got our hands on over 6,000 emails regarding the role of the First Lady. We're going to boil it all down in a few minutes to help you understand when The Story returns. Let's take a look now at a situation that's been brewing in Salem with Oregon Governor Tina Kotek's office and the role that her wife, Amy Kotek Wilson, plays in her administration. In case you missed it, it all started last month when 3 of Governor Kotek's senior staffers, Andrea Cooper, Abby Tibbs, and Lindsay O'Brien, all left the job on the same day. That's quite a statement. Willamette Week reported that the three left because they had ethical concerns about Kotek's wife, Amy, and her increasing role in the governor's office. Then last week, another senior staffer, Communications Director Ann Doe, handed in her resignation letter as well. It's an odd time to suddenly leave the job. Kotek had just had a short session where most of her priorities passed, and it was only a year into the administration. Something's wrong. Through a public records request, we got our hands on 6,000 pages of emails involving the staffers and why they left. They show that there were some big concerns among staff as Amy Kotek Wilson began to take on a bigger role in shaping the governor's behavioral health policy. A lot of reporters have been following this pretty closely and sifting through all those emails. Here's politics reporter Dirk Vanderhart from Oregon Public Broadcasting.
I think I would break it into maybe three main baskets. The first one is a concern about use of resources. So the First Lady has been pushing for an expanded role in the administration, and that has involved more use of staff time for the things she wants to do. So state police, they protect the governor wherever she goes. The First Lady was now receiving more of that protection, and that raised real concerns among staff members about the use of time of the state police. It extends to communications staff. The First Lady was making appearances, making speeches, and whenever she was doing that, she would sometimes request spokespeople to be there to help her with a speech, or maybe a policy advisor to come along on those events. And I think that raised concerns about limited staff time and whether that was the best use of governor's staff role. And then there was just maybe a larger piece of concern, which is around ethics and the blurred lines that this kind of scenario creates. We saw some very, very, I think, candid emails in there about concerns that were raised by members of Kotek staff about, what are the ethics around this? Are there concerns about, if I have, as a staffer, an issue with your wife, can I bring those concerns to somebody, or am I automatically going to lose that argument?
Good questions. Now, for a lot of you, I know this story is ringing some bells. It might remind you of another Oregon governor, John Kitzhaber, who ultimately resigned because of the role that his fiancée, Sylvia Hayes, played in his office. Reporters we talked with today say there are some big differences to keep in mind.
This is not Kitzhaber right now. That was a scandal that had roots in the first fiance, the First Lady at the time, really getting financial gain from her role in the administration and the influence she was able to provide on a slate of things. The First Lady in this case is an unpaid volunteer. We have no evidence that she is taking these kind of paid appearances or getting any sort of money for the role that she is holding. So I think comparisons to Kitzhaber, I understand why people make them. I think they are a little premature at this point, but I don't think we all know where this leads right now. And it's true that there are some concerning pieces in the emails. There's an instance where it appears Governor Kotek directed her staff to make a call to a behavioral health agency in the state, basically as a favor or to address some concerns that her wife's friend had. Now, what kind of sort of blurring of the boundaries does that pose? I mean, there's a very frank email that suggests that was very much out of bounds, and that in fact Kotek and her wife had been warned a number of times about exceeding or abusing the authority of the governor's office. What does that mean?
Well, for now, the governor's office is not commenting on that and what that means, or really anything else. Our team is still sifting through the mountain of emails. As the story continues, though, we will keep you posted. Coming up next on The Story, we're digging for old with help from the Oregon Historical Society. Tonight, we're going to expose you to an item that will soon be part of a permanent exhibit at the museum. It's an icon of Portland's history. Details when The Story returns. In this week's Digging for Old, we take you back to the Oregon Historical Society's secret warehouse, where they store all of the incredible items in their collection that are not currently on display. And I don't know why I did those air quotes, because it really is a secret place. I've been there, but if I told you where it was, I'd have to kill you. There's a unique piece of history that is soon going to be part of the permanent exhibit at the Historical Society, although it's not too flashy, so to speak. It carries the story of a man that many will remember.
Opening in June at the Historical Society is a new permanent exhibit on the history of Portland called Rivers, Roses, and Rip City. We've got some wonderful historic items that are going in the exhibit. One of my favorites being this overcoat, raincoat, trench coat, whatever you want to call it. This coat is probably one of the most iconic coats in Portland history. This is the coat that Bud Clark was wearing, the former Mayor Bud Clark, when he made the very famous or infamous "Expose Yourself to Art" photo. You may remember it's shot from the behind, and he's in front of a statue, and your imagination can take you where it goes. Became a very famous photo. This was done before he was mayor, and he used that photo in his notoriety as an innkeeper up at Goose Hollow to shock Frank Ivancy when he was elected mayor and served for 2 terms as a very successful mayor. And this coat was given to us by Thomas Lauderdale, the impresario of Pink Martini, who had purchased the coat. And when Thomas gave this to us, or loaned this to us actually, he said, "You need to have this, but I don't want it locked up in a vault. It needs to be on display." So we said, we've got the perfect place for it, this new exhibit on Portland. So as long as we keep it on display, then Thomas will loan it to us. Little backstory behind it. It was owned originally by J. Bowerman. Now, Bowerman is probably more well known as Bill Bowerman's father, the famous track coach at U of O and kind of the inspiration to Phil Knight for Nike. And J. Bowerman was briefly governor of Oregon. In the early 1900s, he was president of the Senate. The governor became incapacitated by illness. Under the Constitution at that time, the president of the Senate took over. He was governor of Oregon, ran for the office, but was defeated by Oswald West. Became one of Oregon's most iconic governors. And one of the reasons he was defeated was he was having an affair with his secretary, which became well known. And back in the early 20th century, that couldn't be done. But this coat is just so iconic, and when doing an exhibit in Portland, we figured this had to go into the exhibit.
The stories that coat could tell. And in our search for that Expose Yourself to Art photo, we found a short segment in the KGW vault where Clark talks about how it all came together. Here's KGW's Joe Donlin from back in 2001.
But it was this picture from 1978 that added to his offbeat persona. He donned an overcoat and flashed a brand new statue downtown. He and a friend ran the picture in their neighborhood newspaper.
We said, let's put it in and have a contest for a caption. And we had 350 entries come back. Want to buy a watch? All kinds of entries. And but Expose Yourself to Art was the one that won. There were 3 people that came up with that one.
And when it was printed as a poster, it became a cult phenomenon, a collector's item, selling who knows how many hundreds of thousands of copies.
How about that? I'm sure a few of you have Bud Clark stories to share with us. We'd love to hear about it. You can email us at thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We love hearing from you. We're one of the only shows probably the only show I'm aware of, where you can email in and become part of the story. You create what we decide to cover. You really influence that. Whether you're watching us live right now, or I know a lot of you are watching us on YouTube, that's awesome. Thanks so much for watching and for communicating with us. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. Straight Talk with Laurel Porter's coming your way next, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.